Shalom, shalom, Mishpachah. This is Yerd Yao checking in. My bad, y'all. I know I'm always picking at my beard when I come on here, but I'm just trying to make sure I don't have big, water droplets in my beard or, a piece of rice or something crazy like that. In some of these videos, I'm looking a little bit wild and I hadn't checked myself. I went back and looked at them and I got like a water droplet stuck in my beard or something worse, right? So I just want to make sure I'm all right when I come on here. But I'm just checking in with guys. I know I was supposed to do some of these lives before. I haven't been doing as often as I had been because I've got my computer back and I'm able to work on some projects. So I've been doing that, been making beats and, you know, uh, gathering videos together. My last computer just completely crashed on me. So I had to, find other ways to express these these pent up, uh, I guess you could say, orals um, that that I've got to let loose some type of way. So, I started doing lives. But now that I got my computer back, I've been, doing more video and music production. But we'll get back to doing these lives. These are things that I enjoy doing, and I want to have them down for posterity. So maybe someday someone can stumble across these, and get glean some information and understanding about it. My wife is always on me about putting things down on paper in order to portray a accurate assessment of what's going on in the world today, for history's sake, because of course when the lights go out all of this digital information will vanish, and that is something that I want to do. Excuse me. But right now, with all the other stuff doing, I think just doing these lives will be sufficient for me now. Father willing, we will get around to doing the book. And I don't know how it's going to work or, what I'm going to include because there's so many things, right? But we will be trying to compile a book of some sort to to really portray an accurate depiction of the modern environment. Because it's wild. It's something that has to be portrayed accurately in history because, the winners write history. And since we haven't won in a while, we haven't been able to write in a while. So now we should get back to it. We are the ones who have the oracles of Elohim. So we should, take that responsibility seriously. And hopefully we'll get some people to come through. If not, it'll be just a conversation for people to come back and access later. But the last couple conversations have been about The Game. And this is a movie that came out in the 90s. And we've used this movie as I guess you could say, not a metaphor, but a microcosm or a micro depiction of the way that society actually runs and actually works. It's called The Game, and it's a movie that came out in 96, 97. I saw it when I was in high school, and it was about this, so that would have to be, yeah, around that time. I don't want y'all to have too much information about me, but this was a time that, you know, I guess not that time, but this was a time when there were a lot of moguls that kind of fit um, the person who is the lead character in The Game. So let me just describe the film for you guys if you haven't seen the previous videos. The film is starring Michael Douglas. If you guys know who Michael Douglas is, he used to be a famous actor. He got sick later on in his career and, stopped doing films, became real skinny. But it's starring Michael Douglas, and he is this millionaire. He's a millionaire, I guess you could say businessman. And he's successful, right? But he comes from a a broken past or a family that is broken because his father, when he was 9 or 10, took his own life, and it traumatized him. But it also made him into this shark, this business shark. It made him real savvy and real cutthroat in negotiation. So he was able to, you know, seize a hold of his father's business and turn it into a mega business, right? And so while his personal life is conflicted and, damaged and all these other things, his professional life is successful. And so you've got this juxtaposition of this dual character, these dual characters, right? And this is how some millionaires are, right? This is, an accurate description of how some millionaires are. And so this guy gets bored and, restless. And his brother says, hey, you should try out this thing, right? And he asked him what it is. And he said, well, it's this thing. It's this experience. It's this game. And if you check it out, I think that you won't be disappointed. And he passes him this card, right? And the card has a little pyramid logo on there. You guys are familiar with the pyramid logo and what it stands for. But he passes him this card and he says, I'll think about it, right? And so, a few days passes, and he decides, oh, you know what, I might check this thing out. And so he goes up and, takes the interview, schedules an interview. They do a psychological exam, they do a physical exam, they do a stress test. And then after all of these different things, and he goes up to this big warehouse. It's not a warehouse, it's a skyscraper, and they own the whole floor of the skyscraper. And after he does all of this battery of tests, he's waiting for, a response to see if he's qualified to play this game. And the doctor comes out, or someone who is, appearing to be a doctor, comes out and says, I'm sorry, but, due to such and such and such and such, you're not going to be qualified to play this game. And, this is a shock to Michael Douglas. He's never been rejected or turned down for anything. He's this mogul, right? And so he walks out saying, this is not anything that I wanted to do anyway. Forget it, and forget, my brother for even bringing this crazy crap up to me. But really, he's disappointed, right? But the play is that this is how the game starts, that he has been selected, and this is to throw him off into now the game is starting. Saying that you haven't been selected actually means that you have been, and the game starts from that moment. And from the time that you've done these tests, the time that you signed your name, do you understand? You see what I'm saying? Signed your name. Time that you sign your name on a dotted line, you're in the game. Do you see what I'm saying? And this is the game that every celebrity, every football player worth his salt, right? Every actor, every basketball player, every musician signs up for. Every politician, do you see what I'm saying? Congressman, senator, they sign these contracts. Do you understand what I'm saying? This group includes all the leadership and underlings of the underlings, so that this entire web of people who are connected by oath are invisible in the world around you. And so when the game activates, he now is confronted with the knowledge of knowing that these people are out there, because he keeps running into these wild problems, right? Like his cab driver tries to kill him. And he's just hailing a random cab in New York City, but little does he know that this person was waiting on him, circling the block, waiting on him to get his cab and to come out at the right time for him to grab him. What the guy does is lock the doors, speed the cab up, and jump out and cause him to get into this wreck. Do you see what I'm saying? And nearly, kills him, bangs him up, right? And so it's things like that. Once he goes to this restaurant, a waiter spills drink on him, and it's just a split second. Oh, I'm sorry, geez. And he keeps going. But that waiter comes back at the end of the movie and says, "Hey, how you doing?" He was a part of the game. Do you see what I'm saying? And as he goes from place to place, anybody he comes around is either, could be an actor. Do you see what I'm saying? Could be a player in the game. And so he has to respond in certain type of ways as if, this person knows what's going on. And sometimes people don't, right? So he's so confused that he's going up to random people on the street and being like, uh-huh, yeah, I know you're in on it too. You're watching me too, huh? You know my name? You know my name? You see what I'm saying? He's freaking out because he's a part of this now invisible society that play these psychological games on their participants, right? It's really a psychological game that they're playing. Shalom, shalom. We've got one person on there now. Shalom, shalom, Mishpachah. We're continuing the conversation with the movie The Game, starring Michael Douglas, as the explanatory piece to examine in order to understand the world that is around us. Do you see what I'm saying? The world that we're in now and why it appears the way that it does. Shalom, shalom. That's a wild name you got there. So I hear you, but we don't do no type of devils around here. Do you see what I'm saying? With that out of the way, we'll get back to it. Um, but so yeah, so it's actually the devil worshippers who we're talking about right now. Do you see what I'm saying? These are the rulers of the game. These are the people that are hidden in society that can work together, without really being seen. Do you see what I'm saying? These members of the FBI, these members of the CIA, these members of the special forces groups, these members of the Navy SEALs, these members of street urban gangs, these high level members of street urban gangs, these senators, these politicians, these musicians, these, judges and lawyers, these ball players, these actors. Do you see what I'm saying? This web of people, these frat brothers, these sorority sisters, this web of people, these Freemasons. Do you see what I mean? These Rosicrucians, these skull and bones men. They're all just different denominations of Satanism. And Satanism is what it appears to be. It's the worship of the devil who came to lie, steal, kill, and destroy. Do you see what I'm saying? And they're able to do these things under the cloak of secrecy because they're all sworn in under this secret oath. The mafia and everybody's involved. And this amounts to all these different groups of people coming together and making a very large part of our society that is completely unknown. Do you see what I'm saying? Even these newscasters, these are the people that are involved in these high level cults. And they have all sorts of membership, all the way down to the day one Freemason, right? Not the 33rd degree, the day one Freemason. You see what I'm saying? The day one rookie cop are all working for the Freemason at the top, right? And at the top of that Freemason is the devil. Do you see what I'm saying? This is wickedness, spiritual wickedness in high places that, Paul is talking about in Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6, right? This is the government of wickedness that exists as a spider web permeating just beyond the visible spectrum of our society. Do you see what I mean, you guys? In the movie The Game, starring Michael Douglas, portrays it perfectly. Because as he's stumbling through life, he stumbles on this particular game that turns out to be a cult with all these members involved. And they're able to control the media, to give him instructions and talk to him through the news, right? They're able to break into his house. He's a multimillionaire. He's got this, elaborate alarm and security system. They've got the back door to it. Do you see what I mean? So these are people that have to be either FBI agents or high-level policemen that are breaking into his house. And it's not like this movie is just depicting things as a movie. These are things that they actually do to people. In the movie, he goes home, from, getting into all of these travesties, being out in the world, running into all of these secret agents that are playing these mind games on him. And he finally gets to his house, and his house is, shut down tight, right? And he cuts the lights on, and he's got graffiti all throughout his house. Do you see what I'm saying? All of these crazy marking signs, phrases, and he's like, "What happened?" And he calls the police and says, uh, "My house has been broken into. Somebody came in and graffitied my house, vandalized my house. You guys are gonna have to get here right away." And the police say, "All right, we're right on the way. If you can get a hotel for the night, go ahead and do that. Da 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 da, because maybe the people are still in there, right?" And he's like, "Okay, okay." He's not knowing that probably the person on the other end of the line is one of the people that knows what's going on too, because his phone's tapped and all of these different things. His lines are redirected to their operators. Do you see what I'm saying? This is the way that they can control you in real life. So he goes to get the hotel, right? And as soon as he leaves the house, he realizes, I left something on the inside. And then he goes back to try to get in, and his doors are locked and he can't get in. They've used the security system to lock his doors. Do you see what I'm saying? These are all things that they can do today. And this is why they're showing you in the movie that this is how we can mess with certain people. Um, and that's why they're doing it in the movie. So he goes and gets a hotel, right? Or he goes to get a hotel, and he tries to use his bank card, and his bank card is declined, right? This is a millionaire in the movie, and his bank card is declined. And so now he's stuck like Chuck. He ends up having to sleep out on the street somewhere. He goes home to his house in the morning and finds all the graffiti gone. The police are there and they see and they say, "What's going on? There's no graffiti. It looks spotless in here." They've gone to his house, broken back in, repainted, and cleaned the whole house overnight so that he'll appear like a lunatic. This is what they do to you in real life. You guys remember Martin Lawrence, and I've used this example, in this series. You guys remember Martin Lawrence was in the street waving a gun, talking about, "They're trying to kill me, they're trying to kill me." Who's trying to kill you? You see what I'm saying? Dave Chappelle, you guys know Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle said this about Martin Lawrence. He said, "Martin is a tough guy. He's a Golden Gloves boxer. He's from Detroit. He's from the streets. He's not going to just be no pushover. He's not going to have a nervous breakdown for nothing. He's not going to just be out there wilding out unless there's something that you don't see that's powerful than that's really after him, right?" And you see this was happening around the time that this movie came out. If you guys don't know, Martin was, criticized in the media, called a psychopath, called a, pill addict, a schizophrenic, all sorts of things in the media because he let it slip that somebody was trying to kill him. Do you see what I'm saying? It's this undercover group. Don't worry, I'll be in a minute. It's this undercover group that is, it's this other undercover. It's this undercover group that is that's after him. Do you see what I mean? That's after him, and the spillings over into reality that we see are only him acting crazy, and so then we assume that he's just crazy. But this is the way that it goes. This is the network, and it can be activated on your behalf, and it can also be activated against you. You've seen YouTube stars to come up overnight and be instant celebrities. Do you see all the doors opening? You've seen YouTube stars that are already celebrities go down in flames. Do you see what I'm saying? As the apparatus turns on them, right? Things that aren't true, things that are true. Do you see what I mean? It seems like people can get away with anything that they want to until the apparatus turns on them. Once the apparatus turns on them, then they can't get away with anything. And all the things that they've thought that they've gotten away with are still recorded and are ready to be brought up at any time for amusement or for reprimand. And either one is just as likely because you never know. These people are the wicked of the world, and we rebuke them. Do you see what I'm saying? But we live in their society, and in order to put the pieces together to know what's going on, we have to know that they're there. We can't pretend that they don't exist just because they're invisible. Do you understand? This is what Ephesians 6 is saying, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And that's the truest thing ever because we didn't know it. Do you see what I mean? Growing up, you didn't think that doggone Star Wars had a satanic subtext. Growing up, you didn't think that Jurassic Park was really about creation, but it is. You didn't think that all of these movies that are, like Transformers, right? Transformers, the cartoon Transformers. You didn't know that Transformers was about Second Corinthians. Even Satan can transform into an angel of light. Do you see what I'm saying? But not because they use the term transform in that text, but because the lead Transformer's name is Optimus Prime. And you don't know that the pagan god, and we'll use it as in a teaching context because you're not supposed to call on the names of these pagan entities, except if you're in a teaching context. But we know that the title um, for the pagan deity is supposed to be the king of all deities. Jupiter, the planet named after him, supposedly planet, and it's actually a star. Um, that particular deity was called Optimus Maximus or Optimus Prime. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a synonym. He was called Optimus Maximus, and then you've got Optimus Prime, the leader of this group of robots, right? Do you see what I'm saying? These robots come from another planet and they crash land on Earth like fallen angels, right? The second movie in the Transformers series is called Revenge of the Fallen. Do you see what I'm saying? Just to make the subtext a little bit more loud. Make it a little bit louder, right? You see what I mean? This is how it goes. This is the real power behind the celebrities. This is the real power behind the politicians. And every once in a while, it shows its face. Do you see what I mean? Every once in a while, it slips through the cracks and you get a chance to take a look at it, right? One of those slips was when Martin was running through the streets, right? Another one of those slips was when Britney Spears got on got on this talk show and malfunctioned some kind of way, right? It was real weird if you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, look up Britney Spears malfunction, and she, goes into some jibber jabber. It seems like she was triggered by a certain word. I think it was the word crazy. I think it was Diane Sawyer who was interviewing her, and she said, "Haven't things been a little bit crazy lately?" And Britney Spears, if I'm getting this wrong, y'all correct me, but Britney Spears says, "Crazy, ha ha ha, crazy," and then she starts rambling strawberries and saying these things that are nonsensical, non sequitur. And then she said, "No, I'm not crazy," and then she starts crying. And then they cut the camera, right? Because this word has triggered her in some weird way. Because of, we know, the MK Ultra program. Do you guys know what MK Ultra is? It's when people are literally tortured into repeating things and doing things in a subconscious state. They made an entire movie about it. It's called The Bourne Identity. They made several movies about it. The first one was Manchurian Candidate back in the 50s. They've been able to do these things since the 50s. So the technology is so well ingrained and invisible in society that any of these people could be a Manchurian candidate. And especially the most talented people that are in the country because they've been trained in that way. Do you see what I'm saying? They've been trained to be these robotic, repeating, people. And it's these groups, these secret high-level groups in the government and in law enforcement and in academia as well that that enforce these things and that put these things together. Do you see what I'm saying? That put these experiments together that 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 bleed into society so well that you don't know that they are a part of the experiment. Do you see what I'm saying? Movies, even the way that movies are made, are all experiments in psychology because they all have this subtext, this satanic subtext to them. So we look at movies as classical culture, but in reality, it's propaganda pieces, right? That's all they are is propaganda pieces, but we look at them as a part of culture. That's how well this secret psychology is embedded within the society that we don't even see it, right? We watching TV, we thinking that people are trying to make us laugh, and they're actually brainwashing us in one way or another, right? Brainwashing us to believe this or that. Do you see what I'm saying? This is when you can see these things, is when the veil slips, right? And you can see into all of the things that they are doing, right? Like when in the Matrix, when Neo is able to see the coding, it's like that. You can see the propaganda at play, especially when you know what the purpose is. When you don't know that the world behind the scenes is satanic, then you just consume the information and are influenced. But once you know that that's what it is, because you're not looking necessarily for the devil in the details, but when you find them there, now you can see them everywhere, right? And this is, nothing but the spirit of Yah giving enlightenment to this age, to this era, when we hadn't had it in the past. We went, centuries not knowing that these cults were in play. But now we know. Do you see what I'm saying? Now we know and now we can see. And so, one example of this, and this is what I really wanted to get into, was an example of a really wild example of what it looks like when these groups perform an operation. Do you see what I'm saying? And so let me just go over again the premise that we're dealing with here. What we're doing is we're using the game, right? The movie, The Game, in order to have a cinematic example or a cinematic reference to see what and how the cult operates in society. We're not using the movie to dictate what we see in real life. We're using the movie as reference to explain what we see in real life, if that makes sense. Do you see what I'm saying? And so when we recognize that these little clues, like Anne Hesh jumping up from the back of a stretcher. Do you guys remember we talked about that a couple days ago? Anne Hesh, the famous actress that was married to another famous actress or daytime talk show witch. I can't remember. Oh, Ellen DeGeneres. That she was behind the wheel of a car, and we can see on ring cameras where she sped up and actually went through somebody's house, like flew off the ground and went into somebody's house with her car and was badly injured. But when the ambulance showed up, she was trying to get off the ambulance. Do you see what I'm saying? We're not saying that this woman was a drug addict or anything like that. She knew that her life was in further danger from the ambulance operators because in this particular cult that she's in, she knows that there are multiple ways to get people, even having your 911 call intercepted and the ambulance operator that works for you going to pick her up to finish the job in the ambulance. And that's exactly what happened. Anne Hesh was violently trying to get out, grabbing onto the side of the ambulance door, lifting up off of the stretcher. They pushed her down, pushed her in the stretcher, and next thing you know, she's dead. Anne Heche knows about this secret community that's all over the place. It's in the police department, it's in the fire department, it's in the ambulance operators, it's driving ambulance, it's paramedics that are actors, that are movie stars. Actors are movie stars, football players, basketball players. Every lawyers, judges, everyone that you would need to control things in every level of society, they're there. Do you see what I'm saying? And Anne Hedge knows about it and is trying her best to escape out of it, even though she can't. She's pushed down, pushed in the back of the ambulance, taken off to the hospital, and dies. Do you see what I'm saying? And so this is the slip. This is the evidence for the unseen spiritual world slipping out so that we can see it. We're seeing the action of an unseen actor, or the cause and effect, and we have to from the evidence, um, calculate the cause, right? And so let me just give you an example of an operation that's pulled off by this group. Do you see this invisible satanic group that runs everything? We'll give you an example of an attack on America. Do you see what I'm saying? Especially a particular group in America. And so this is not going to be popular, really, because, our history in the community is, one that is very sensitive to police brutality. And people like to look at things through the popular lens, and you know and then are influenced because of it, right? And I'll have to tell you that I was one of the people that was influenced too when these events were happening. And I went out and, in my own style, participated in some of the backlash, but of course in a Hebraic fashion, trying to wake my people up. Because, of course, any sort of attention, during a time of riot or a tumultuous time, is, appreciated for the community. And, that's why I was out there. But let me explain to you what it is. And you guys may have already kind of figured it out. It's George Floyd. Do you see what I'm saying? George Floyd, 2020, I believe. George Floyd was an operation by the invisible satanic cult against America. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Was it 2019? I think it was 2019 even. 2019, 2020. During COVID, right? People were marching up and down with masks on right next to each other like there wasn't a bubble, right? Like there wasn't the 6 foot bubble or whatever they would say, whatever ridiculousness that they would say. Um, so, yeah. And during this time, people were convinced that they needed to be walking up and down in the streets protesting and rioting. I was one of those people that was protesting. I was in the protest crowd next to Antifa members, next to regular people, marching through the projects, preaching through the projects, uh, doing everything I could to represent the Hebraic part of the community. I was out there, for a few days holding a sign up that said, "We are the real Hebrews of the Bible." And, anybody that came and talked to me, or anytime I had an opportunity to say things to a crowd, that's what I did. Do you see what I'm saying? And, with varying response, but mostly positive. Do you see what I mean? And so being in that situation myself and having this emotional connection to the event, motivated me to be out there with them. But at the same time, was it an honest motivation, or was it something that was fabricated? Turns out it was a situation that was fabricated, y'all. George Floyd, and then people is gonna trip that I'm saying this, but this is what the actual evidence suggests, right? This, and a lot of this information comes from the MAGA crowd, so you guys don't confuse me with any sort of political leanings, left or right. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Kamala supporter. I'm not a Biden supporter. They're all devils. They all work for the same devil, and that devil is the head of Babylon right now, and that's why we do not live in Babylon. Because either way you go, on that left wing or that right wing, you're still gonna get that evil and wicked and unclean bird, right? It's full of unclean birds, y'all. But so when this was going on, people were riled up. Let's do this for George. Let's Let's do this for George. And people were rioting. There's all sorts of things that happened. There was actually a Hebrew Israelite guy out in Seattle that took over a police station and made his own city for a little while. That wasn't too much publicized, but it happened, right? And this is all from George Floyd, right? And then also, this George Floyd sentiment, um, you know, swept Joe Biden into the White House as well, which is a whole nother story. I believe that's what happened. I may be mistaken about that. Maybe was that the way it happened? I might be getting my timeline confused here. I think that's the way it happened, y'all. But anyway, my point is that that George Floyd was not killed by that police officer, right? And the reason why we know this is because of the autopsy report. The autopsy report comes back and says that George Floyd died from an overdose of fentanyl, y'all. George Floyd died from an overdose of fentanyl. Do you see what I'm saying? This is evidence of that unseen, hidden society. And I'm going to explain why. So, there are a lot of things about George Floyd and the officer that killed him. His name is Derek Chauvin, that don't make sense, you guys. For one, they worked as bodyguards in the same club there in Milwaukee. Was it in Milwaukee? They're in Milwaukee for 17 years. I'm going to repeat that. And this is like, back in the day, this was breaking news for me. That's how I knew something was up, right? So they were bodyguards. I say bodyguards, I mean bouncers. They were bouncers in the same club for 17 years on the same nights. Do you see what I'm saying? For 17 years. So here's the first fact about George Floyd that you have to make sense of. You have to make sense, but put it together that George Floyd and Derek Chauvin, this is his name, knew each other. They knew each other, y'all. Derek Chauvin and George Floyd knew each other. That's a fact. You can't work at the same club, doing the same job at that club, on the same nights every week for 17 years and not have ran into the guy, especially enough for him to kill you and not even say a mumbling word that he recognized you. Do you see what I'm saying? You don't work on a job with somebody for 17 years and you don't know who they are. You know them by name. You recognize them and you've spoken to them before. You see what I'm saying? So George Floyd and Derek Chauvin for sure knew each other. But on camera, when Derek Chauvin got his, what was it, his knee on George Floyd's neck, neither of them are making any any sort of, I don't know, reaction to one another. Like, hey, I know you from the club. You take it easy on me. We're buddies. And Derek Chauvin's not saying, aren't you that guy from the club? To be acting better than this. We don't need to be out here like this. Do you see what I'm saying? Regardless of anything, they know each other. And they pretended not to. Even in a life or death situation, a situation that should have, elicited a, hey, take it easy on me, buddy. We worked together for 20 years. Should have elicited that, right? Do you see what I'm saying? That's a fact. Fact of the case. They knew each other, and Derek Chauvin, George Floyd died from fentanyl overdose. Those are two facts. And I'm not saying that George Floyd was even a drug user or abuser or any of those things. I don't know. Um, but what I do know is that he wasn't killed by strangulation. He wasn't killed by asphyxia. Do you see what I'm saying? That means that there was something else that happened. And I'll explain. Based on these two pieces of evidence, this is what happened, you guys. It's actually three pieces of evidence because we know that the Satanic Society that operates like in the game, in the reality around you, and plays these pranks, these attacks, these psychological operations, whatever you want to call them, on the public to get a reaction, to get a, you know, an emotional gut reaction, happens, right? That this is the nature of America. So that's, three pieces of evidence that we have to use, that we must use to be able to accurately engage and understand the event that happened. You have to recognize that the government is a satanic cult. You have to recognize that Derek Chauvin and George Floyd knew each other for nearly 20 years. And you have to recognize that his death wasn't what they said. It wasn't strangulation, it was fentanyl overdose. So this is what happened, you guys. George Floyd was in on it. Does that sound ridiculous? We've got one person on here. George Floyd was in on it. He was in on his own murder. Now, how could that happen? Do you see what I'm saying? How could you be in on your own murder? Well, he had to be in on it because he didn't, or he pretended not to recognize Derek Chauvin. So this is what happened. They recruited George Floyd for play. Do you see what I'm saying? They recruited him because he was a part of the game. And he had to operate in the way that they told him to. Now, I don't think that he knew he was going to die at the end. I seriously doubt that he knew he was going to die at the end. But he was chosen for this role and he played it. Do you see what I'm saying? He could have been told, oh, well, you just pass out. And then when you wake up, you'll go to court and you'll do all these different things and you'll end up getting paid at the end of it because as you recover, you're going to get these lawsuits and, it's going to be all good for your family because this is going to become a national event. Do you see what I'm saying? It was probably Derek Chauvin himself that chose George Floyd for the part because he knew him already for 20 years and that he knew he would play his part well. You see what I'm saying? All you got to do is take this pill to make you pass out. And, you take it about, 5 minutes before I bump into you or whatever the situation that happened where they got into it. You take it about 5 minutes before I run into you. And then once the scene goes out, my camera guy's going to be there. And I'm going to sit on your chest and you're going to pretend not to be able to breathe. Then you're going to pass out and you're going to wake up in the hospital and you're going to have your lawsuit. It's going to be a big thing in the media. You don't have to pay attention to none of that. Just do the interviews and play your role. And you're going to come out with $1 million at the end. This is what we do for our members. This is what we do to our Freemasonic, buddies. We help them out. And if you got to do this and play this role, then so be it. You see what I'm saying? But you need to play this role. You that guy. You going to be that guy. Oh, okay, yeah, I could do that. I could do that. And he plays the role. He plays the role to a T. He takes the pill, and in 5 minutes after he takes that pill, he's dead, y'all. The pill kills him. And Derek Chauvin sitting on top of his chest, playing his part too. Do you see what I'm saying? Playing his role too from whoever assigned to him this job. And we say he's locked up right now. We say he's this place or that place. We don't know where he's at. You don't know any of the circumstances behind bars. This is an ex-cop. You see what I'm saying? You don't know the circumstances for him behind bars. If they've got doggone, what's his name? The GD, the creator of the GDs. Can't remember his name, but he got all the celebrity buddies. If they had gang leader, I can't remember his name right now, but he's the one that created the GDs, the Gangster Disciples, right? The big gang in Chicago. If he can get, drugs in and out of prison, and he got his own cell and like luxury, and he can use phones, and he's got, the stories that's coming out about him since the 90s in jail, running to jail and having girls in and out, like it's, just like like some sort of luxury hotel that he's, not luxury because it's the prison, but he's able to do, and he just can't leave, but he's able to do and do whatever he wants, right?
So we don't know the situation for Derek Chauvin in there. He may have been rewarded, and so he may not even be in there. He may be living under an assumed name somewhere else. You see what I'm saying? You guys don't understand the name Derek Chauvin actually has a meaning. Chauvin is the word, and this he's got a weird name anyway. It's a weird name. It's not a normal style name. So what does it mean then? I was researching this case and just happened to look up what that name meant because I thought it was weird. And you guys won't believe this. It's the word for chauvinist. Have you guys heard of the term male chauvinist? My mama made that term known to me. Male chauvinist pig, right? This is what she was calling people, this is what she calls Trump, a male chauvinist pig, right? And so me growing up, her using that term since I was young, I was familiar with the word, but I thought it was just like this toxic masculine person, right? But what it actually means, chauvinist, is someone who is ultra patriotic, someone who it will fight for their country and, really fight hard for their country. It's a French word. It comes from the French Revolution or somewhere like that. So that sort of term. A chauvinist was somebody who really, fought hard for France, for the French style of governance, right? Way back in the day and, long time ago, right? And so a chauvinist was someone who was ultra patriotic. And Derek is a Hebrew word which means way or path. You see what I'm saying? So literally this guy's name is the path to patriotism. You guys kidding me? It was a play. It was a play from the beginning that George Floyd was a willing participant in, but didn't know the deception thereof. Do you see what I'm saying? That they would actually kill him at the end of this experiment. Do you see what I'm saying? You've got going back to the 60s and the 70s, a group of psychologists that, were performing these MK Ultra. You guys are familiar with MK Ultra and the German experimentation with mind control. People think that there's crazy stuff, but it's documented for years since the 60s, right? So these scientists, were experimenting with real people and were doing all sorts of crazy things, right? And so they would recruit other psychologists to be, to be monitors and, participants, like on the upper level, to be monitoring, participating in the experiment, or leading the experiment, not participating in the experiment. But they would recruit them, and there was one particular psychologist that wasn't military, that wasn't government, that was interested, and they reached out to him to perform these what they call terminal experiments, right? And I can't remember the psychologist's name, but they reached out to him to perform these terminal experiments, and what that meant was that the patient would be deceived into joining this program, and this program would utilize the patient and monitor the patient's psychological activity, his stress, all the way out until the end of the experiment. But since it was a terminal experiment, called a terminal experiment, the end of the experiment culminated with the death of the participant. That in this psychological experiment, the participant isn't slated to escape it, he's actually meant to die from the experimentation. And this psychologist, wrote back and said, not only will I do these terminal experiments, I'll do them for free, he said. And this was in the 60s and 70s. He said, I'll do them for free. You see what I'm saying? These are the type of people that the game is consisting of. This is in society was implemented at such a fundamental level in the society of America that you can't even see it. You see what I'm saying? And then through these little slips, these random facts, you're able to piece together what actually went on behind the scenes. So George Floyd was a play, was an attack against the black community, and then the Hebrew black community, and then the nation at large, by fomenting this dual sort of patriotism where black people and like-minded people are marching through the streets fighting for their rights. And then on the other side, white people are seeing half of the play and saying, "Oh, well, this is going to inspire me also," but in a backlash against your hatred of the community, what they perceive as hatred. But what it actually is, the people marching with George Floyd are marching for rights, right? So it's a form of patriotism too. It's supposed to be the American way to present your argument before the government in order for them to listen to you. Do you see what I'm saying? So both sides are patriotism. So if you're a chauvinist, if you're on the Trump side and you say, well, he's an officer of the law and he shouldn't have been out there doing whatever he's doing, and then you're also a chauvinist if you're like, well, this was an unfair act. America was not created for this purpose. We're all supposed to be equal and free. You're a chauvinist in both ways. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's why the character picked to portray this message was Derek Chauvin, because his name literally means the way of patriotism. Do you see what I'm saying? That's how we know it's a play. This is one of the clues that they inserted inside the operation to let you know that it was an operation. Do you see what I mean? The devil likes to put his name on things, or else, how do the people that are involved or not involved and can be manipulated, how do they know that this is your work unless you put your, just see, we did this, we played these people in this way. This is the type of power that we have. If you get out of the way or you get out of line, we'll do the same thing to you. You see what I'm saying? It's the way that the game operates. And it's real, right? And the only way to protect yourself from it is with Yahweh Elohim, because he gives you the eyes to see. Because a lot of people see these things going on in reality and see that they're Satanists and see that it's dangerous and all of these other different things, but don't know the way out. Just have the information, right? And the information can't save you because you'll see these things and end up joining it anyway, because the one that gets you will be the one that gets you. You got all these people talking about, oh, we believe in truth and justice, and we believe in scripture and Torah, we stand on Torah. And then they'll go out and be Trump supporters because Trump is supposedly anti-establishment. An anti-establishment billionaire. It's ridiculous, right? Do you see what I'm saying? People that are supposed to be standing on Torah, people that are supposed to be standing on truth, are voting for president, voting for Caesar, voting for Messiah, even. You see what I'm saying? It's all a part of this game. And the way that the game works is psychologically. And that's the reason why a George Floyd situation exists. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the way that it is. This is the way that the society works. This is Babylon. And this is Babylonian sorcery, you guys. It's Babylonian sorcery. You can find it in Revelation chapter 18. It says, and her sorceries deceived, and the Babylonian sorceries deceived the whole world. Do you see what I'm saying? This is the game in action. George Floyd is an example of an undercover operation. Not because we want it to be that way, but because that's what the evidence suggests. The evidence is that George Floyd didn't die from what they said on TV, that his autopsy says he dies from a fentanyl overdose, and that Derek Chauvin, his killer, the cop who was his killer, knew him for 17 years. This doesn't jive with what was presented to us in the media as a random person and a random police officer engaging in police brutality and accidentally killing this other person, this black person, and then causing racial unrest because of it. It wasn't that. Do you see what I'm saying? Because if they knew each other, couldn't have been that. If George Floyd didn't die there, couldn't be that. It has to be something else. And what it actually appears to be is a play that Derek Chauvin handpicked George Floyd for this role, and George Floyd played the role, and the role is on camera, and they tricked him and poisoned him, and he died. They poisoned him with a fentanyl pill so that it would look like just a drug overdose. Do you see what I'm saying? So his death could look like a drug overdose. And if all else failed, if the information came out that this is what happened, well, he was a drug addict anyway. Nobody will care. Do you see what I'm saying? The people that are protesting won't care because his death being at the hand of the cop and not the drug is a better talking point or a better marching point, I should say. And then on the other side, the people who are the Trump supporters will readily believe that he died from fentanyl and not the police officers. But they'll be so racist that nobody will believe them. Do you see what I'm saying? Even though the Trump supporters will have a point, they don't have the point in righteousness. They have the point because they want to exonerate their racist white cop brother who is there to protect their society anyway. Do you see what I'm saying? Both sides being chauvinistic, just to add an exclamation point in the operation. Do you see what I'm saying? Operation with an exclamation point. Do you see what I mean? So that's what I wanted to come out here and talk about. I've actually wanted to talk about this for a little while because for me, it's a perfect example of how the game works behind the scenes. Because, you know, you would see and readily believe that a cop killed somebody black because it does happen all the time. But for the situation to be controlled in the way that it was, and then also to be promoted in the way that it was, it should be understood for what it was. And all the pieces say that it was a play. Now, why would you have to choose these particular people and this role and these series of events in order to do it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they couldn't just randomly pick any of the ones that happen all the time. Maybe because the players are better controlled if they're already in your group. Maybe the people involved. There's usually people that are Freemasons, which I believe George Floyd was too. Do you see what I'm saying? People that are Freemasons are sometimes generational Freemasons. So their dad, their mom would have been a Freemason too. And we know that we saw, some people from his family that were, speaking out and following the same, narrative. So we don't know how deep it goes in his family tree, but we do know about him and that he was a part of the play. And there's no way around that he was a part of the play. And this just shows you how the media works on behalf of this game to manipulate a scenario in order to, provide cover for whatever you've got coming next. And if you see the result of George Floyd as well, you'll see that that in my city they drew a rainbow on the ground on down Main Street with George Floyd's name on it. No policy changes, no police reform, no introduction of any bills or anything like that. Nothing. No funds, no money being raised for awareness of police brutality. No programs that are set in place. None of that. Just show, just a picture, a painting on Main Street. And I look through the country and there's a lot of paintings on walls and memorials, right? Memorials of the operation, of the psychological event, not change, memorials. Do you see what I mean? A sacrifice. This is how it works. And it wouldn't have worked without a sacrifice, because somebody waking up in the hospital is not going to push people to march in the street. They knew that. It's just George didn't. You can be a part of the play and the play is against you. You see what I mean? But we'll get into, the nuances of it in a future video. But I just wanted to explain this one and use that particular example because it best fits and it best illustrates that style, of control in the way that, that the movie also dictates. The movie is the fictionalized version of what really happened with George Floyd. And you can put either person in as, Michael Douglas, either George Floyd or Derek Chauvin, because they're both victims of this game. No matter what, maybe he does have to go to jail. Maybe he does have to, maybe he was part of the play too. Maybe he was deceived as well, that they did prosecute him. Maybe he was promised, that he wouldn't be prosecuted because lots of these cops aren't, right? Whatever it took to get him to play in the role. Even if he said, oh, if you don't do this, we'll do that, whatever it took, he played his part in the role because he knew George Floyd. He wasn't gonna do that to somebody. He wasn't gonna pretend like he didn't know him. Because what if he said, "Yo, I know you." You see what I'm saying? I know you from the club. Come on, man, we're buddies. He didn't say that, and George didn't say that, so it was a play. All right, you guys, I've got one person on here, and we ran Rabbit Devil off because we don't want no Rabbit Devils around here. But if anybody's got any questions, then now is the time to ask. And if you're watching this, in the future, then if you leave a question in the comments, we'll get to it in the next video or address it in the comments or do whatever we need to do. If we need to expound on a subject, we'll definitely do that. But on this channel, we'll switch between deep biblical study and then also interpretation. And of course, we'll never leave from biblical study because this is, the fabric that runs through our life. All of it is presented with the backdrop of Scripture because we use the Scripture to identify the things in the world. So no video will be without Scripture. No video will be without interpretation. But we will, in some videos, focus more on the text, and then in other ones, focus more on interpreting the text in the modern society. So I hope you guys were able to glean some information off of this video. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me this night. And if we don't have any questions, we'll close it on down. Shalom, shalom, y'all. Peace and blessings.